We'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of July 6, 2016. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including staff reports, is available at the front of the chambers with the clerk. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you park in the parking garage across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are necessary. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, the commissioners and the staff, cellular phone usage is not permitted in these chambers during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action today is final on the following items: 1.4 Special Permit 16027 and 1.5 Special Permit 16028. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held June 22nd, 2016. May I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second. Cornelius.
Jerry, please call the vote.
And that was Lynn.
Sunderman.
Okay.
Yes.
Cornelius,
Yes.
Harris, Sunderman,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Hove.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I'll ask Jerry to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we'd ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Jerry, please call the items on the consent agenda.
Okay, I need to announce that item 1.3, Special Permit 16025, is being deferred for 2 weeks. Commissioner Harris is declaring a conflict of interest on this item, and with the removal of her from the commissioners, we would not have a quorum. So the public hearing and action on this item is being deferred to the next meeting on August 20th. Or I'm sorry, July 20th. Okay, and also please note that item 1.4, special permit number 16027, is being removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing as we've received written opposition to this application. Okay, I'll go ahead and read into the record the remaining consent agenda items. Item 1.1 is change of zone number 16018 from O3 Office Park District and R4 Residential to R4 Planned Unit Development to include the existing church campus and a proposed new building with a waiver to setbacks and parking requirements on property generally located at 6111 Morrill Avenue. Item 1.2 is change of zone number 16019 from I1 Industrial to RT Residential Transition on property generally located at 1430 South Folsom Street. Item 1.4 is being removed for a separate public hearing. Item 1.5 is special permit number 16028 for the sale of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises on property generally located at 1050 Saltillo Road. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these consent agenda items?
I see none.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on any of these items? If so, please stand and state that item.
It appears none, so I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Jerry, please call the vote.
Cornelius,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Sunderman,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Hove.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
There are no requests for deferral on today's agenda. We'll now proceed to public hearings. The staff will make a brief presentation. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes, then you'll have 1 minute to wrap up the testimony. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Jerry, please call the first public hearing item.
Okay. Item 3.1 is special permit number 16027 for an agricultural community unit plan on approximately 84.36 acres, more or less, including 5 single-family lots with waivers to pedestrian way, stormwater detention, block length, and lot lines at right angles to street on property generally located at West Bennett Road and Southwest 14th Street. This is final action on this item unless appealed to the city clerk or city council, and staff recommendation is for conditional approval. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
I see none. Steve?
Steve Hendrickson with the Planning Department. Have up here air photo showing the location of this application. Generally, this CUP application is to the southwest, west of West Bennett Road, west of Southwest 14th Street. It is on property that is zoned AG agricultural. It's approximately 84 acres in size. Currently with the AG agricultural zoning, it has a minimum 20-acre lot size, so they could do 4 dwelling units on this property by right, each sitting on a 20-acre lot. Instead, what they're requesting is a special permit for a community unit plan as part of the bonus for preserving a lot of the area in farmland and for future potential urban development. The applicant gained 1 additional dwelling unit as a part of the CUP. So the CUP is for 5 dwelling units rather than the 4 that they could do by right. Generally, what the plan is shown is that it has a new road that comes off Southwest 14th Street. There are 5 lots along there. In this particular area, it is in the future urban area for the city of Lincoln, but it is at the very far extreme edges. So it is really more of a tier 3 distant growth area for the city of Lincoln, but nonetheless, we do require that they have a build-through plan shown. So on each of the 5 lots, there is a little building envelope, and then typically what they do is they pick one of the building envelopes to build the house on, and that allows the other building envelopes potentially to be split into future urban-sized lot at some point, quite a bit in the future, when the city may have grown out into this area and provide city water and city sewer to this area. Initially, it'll be private systems. Each of the lots will be a minimum of 3 acres in size. It is in the rural water district, but the nearest rural water district line is over 2 miles away. And so the applicant is not using the rural water district just because of the cost of trying to provide water service to these 5 lots. We did receive 2 letters in opposition, and both of those mentioned concerns about water quantity in the area. And we do have Doug Smith here with the Health Department who could answer any questions that may come up in terms of the water quantity in this area. The applicant did submit some information to this for the Health Department to review, and they recommended approval of the application. And be happy to answer any other questions you might have before you hear from the applicant.
Any questions for Steve? Thanks very much. Applicant?
Good afternoon. I'm Lyle Loth with Riga Engineering Group here on behalf of Randall Winch, the applicant for this project. I think the staff report is pretty self-explanatory on what we're proposing here. I will add a couple of additional comments. During the staff review, there were a couple of issues brought up that we will be addressing as part of the conditional approval of this thing. One of them deals with water quality. Their city has adopted new water quality standards, and while we're not going to, or not going to fully address the water quality issues, we have worked out an agreement with the Watershed Management, Ben Higgins, whereby we will be providing a 30-foot drainage easement from the future roadway to the south property line. That in that drainage easement, we will be planting native grasses and provide a maintenance plan for the maintenance of those grasses they will basically function as a filter to address the water quality issues. And as I said, watershed management is satisfactory with that approach. So that will be added after the approval is granted here. On the well issue, as Steve mentioned, we had provided a fairly comprehensive list of registered wells in the area, and I did make a count, and within probably a 1.5 mile radius of this project, there are 55 registered wells. 47 of those have indicated their pumping capacities. They range in a maximum of 45 gallons per minute, a minimum of 7 gallons per minute, and have an average of 19 gallons per minute. These are clearly domestic wells for acreage homes or farm homes. I doubt that any of those have irrigation capabilities because of their size. The folks that expressed some concerns about the water quantity did indicate that there are apparently some center pivots that they experienced some low water levels 3 years ago. I'm not familiar with that, but perhaps Doug can address that in a little more issue in the future. But the 5 additional wells that would be included with this project, I really don't think would have a would have a negligible impact on the groundwater in the area. So I don't really know that that's a particular concern. The system the lots will be provided with, or will be served with lagoons and septic systems, and they all will have a minimum of 3 acres in size, so that should be adequately to handle the setbacks and so on. So I know one of the other concerns was discharging of firearms on the property, and I did a little bit of research. I didn't find a whole lot, but I did find that there is a statute that prohibits hunting within 200 yards of an inhabited building or a feedlot. And although I didn't actually find it, I know there are some other criteria, at least in neighboring states, whereby it's prohibited to discharge a firearm within 150 yards of an inhabited building. So those are state rules or state recommendations at least. So, and I guess with that, I'd try to answer any questions you might have.
Maya?
Do you anticipate that there will be any covenants or anything like that regulating firearms and maybe imposing restrictions in addition to what's already there?
I believe there will be covenants, but I don't know that they will necessarily address firearms. In my experience, I don't recall ever seeing that particular covenant in an acreage subdivision like this. And not to say that it couldn't happen, but I think generally we rely on the game and parks and the state regulatory agencies to monitor discharge of firearms and so on.
Okay, then just one other question. There have been some concerns from emergency communications about the West Leoma Lane name being too similar to already existing street names. Are you comfortable with changing that?
Yes, and my understanding is that it has been now agreed that it will be called West Leoma Marie Lane. And I think that was, the emergency folks were okay with that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Waltz? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here wishing to testify in support of this item? Is there anyone here wishing to testify in opposition of this item? Do we have any questions for the safety folks or the water folks? You have anything else you'd like to say? Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion?
Seems fairly standard with what we've done in the past. I agree that the water usage is not going to be great in the area, and the Center Pivots probably is the biggest user of that water when they had issues. And I know one neighbor talked about water drainage coming down, and it sounds like they're attempting to do part of the, partly address that with the filtering berm. That's it.
Anyone else? I'm going to support the motion. I think it was explained well by Lynn, and the fact is it's only going from 4 units to 5 units, so I think it makes sense. Jerry, please call the vote.
Cornelius?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Sunderman?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Hove?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. We're adjourned.